Dr. Love, Mr. Love, the Maestro of Love, Prince of Pillow Talk, Ambassador of Romance, and King of Disco. That was actually, they called you that for a while.
Yeah.
Barry White, you know the name. The Maestro, the Walrus of Love, that impossibly deep voice that made millions of babies. But before he was singing love songs, Barry White was committing horrible crimes. He was a gangbanger, a thief, a criminal who ended up behind bars as a teenager. So how did this violent street thug become the king of romance? And more importantly, what's the shocking lie about the family tragedy that haunted him his entire life? Let's find out. To understand Barry White's darkness, you need to understand where he came from. He was born Barry Eugene Carter in Texas in 1944, but his real story starts in South Central Los Angeles. His mother moved him there when he was just 6 months old, along with his younger brother, Daryl. She was looking for a better life, like thousands of other black families leaving the South. They were chasing jobs in California's defense factories, the promise of opportunity, but that better life never came. The city had a dirty secret. It was called redlining. Banks, real estate agents, and insurance companies worked together to keep black families trapped in certain neighborhoods. They wrote racial restrictions right into property deeds. Black families couldn't buy homes in white areas, no matter how much money they had, so everyone got crammed into places like South Central. The schools were terrible, overcrowded, and underfunded. There were no jobs, no investment, no help from the government. The whole system was designed to keep people down. It was a pressure cooker designed to fail. In that environment, street gangs weren't just criminal organizations. They were survival. Social clubs and car groups started popping up in the 1950s with names like the Lowriders, the Gladiators, and the Slawsons. At first, they were just about hanging out and identity. But when you have no future and no one cares about you, those groups become something else. They become your family, your school, and your protection all rolled into one. One sociologist said these gangs became a surrogate for everything society failed to provide. And the police made everything worse. Chief William Parker ran the LAPD like an occupying army from 1950 to 1966, treating young black men like enemies. So kids turned to the gangs, not because they were bad, because they had no other choice. Barry and his brother Daryl joined a gang called the Businessmen. They operated around 51st Street and Avalon Avenue in South Central. The name made them sound smart, like they were tacticians who knew how to take care of business. But the reality was brutal and bloody. What do you think? Was Barry White a product of his environment, or did he make his own choices? Drop your answer in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another shocking story like this one. Barry White wasn't playing around. He admitted it himself later. "I was a dedicated member to my gang," he said. "I burglarized. I stole cars. I fought. I was in gang fights. This wasn't kid stuff. This was serious crime. He was dealing marijuana and barbiturates on the streets. He was fighting rival gangs like the Slawsons, the Gladiators, and the Dale Vikings. And these weren't fist fights. They used knives, baseball bats, makeshift weapons, and guns, lots of guns. His brother Daryl was even worse. He'd been sent to juvenile detention when he was only 8 years old. Barry saw where it was all heading. He even warned Daryl about it. "We gang banging and going crazy out here in these streets, man, but it doesn't lead nowhere," he said. "All that gets you is old winos, jailhouses, or dead." But Barry was living that same life. And to survive in that world, you had to act a certain way. You had to be the oldest, the baddest, the most feared. Showing weakness got you killed. It was all about violence and toughness. That's the Barry White nobody talks about. Then in 1960, everything changed. Barry was 16 years old when he got caught stealing $30,000 worth of Cadillac tires. That's over $300,000 in today's money. This wasn't some kid grabbing candy. This was organized crime, a major felony. He got sent to a juvenile detention center for somewhere between 4 and 7 months. And here's where the story gets interesting. While he was locked up, Barry heard a song on the radio. It was Elvis Presley's "It's Now or Never." According to Barry, that song changed his life. It gave him an epiphany. He realized he was the only one responsible for being in that cell. "Yeah, you in jail, but how did you get here?" he said later. "It was nothing but Barry that put you here." So he made a decision. When he got out, he'd leave the gang life behind. He changed his friends, and he dedicated himself to music as his only way to survive. It's a beautiful story. Redemption, transformation, a lightning bolt moment that changed everything. But let's be honest, it's also a perfectly crafted story. Too perfect. For a man building an empire on love songs, a violent gang past is a serious problem. So what's the solution? You create a myth, a single moment where you suddenly saw the light. The song was even called It's Now or Never. You couldn't write a better metaphor if you tried. By telling this story over and over in interviews and in his autobiography, Barry White controlled his own narrative. He wasn't defined by the crimes anymore. He was defined by the moment he stopped. It was genius, a masterful act of creating his own legend. Barry Carter, the gangbanger, died. Barry White, the artist, was born. But here's where things get really dark, and here's where they lied to you. Barry's brother, Darryl, was murdered. That much is true. But when and how he died, that's where the story falls apart. For years, the official story was simple. Darryl was killed in a gang war in the early 1960s. Right around the time Barry was in jail, a rival gang took him out. It was tragic, but it made sense. It fit the narrative perfectly. Barry's brother died in the streets, and that tragedy pushed Barry to change his life for good. It was the ultimate cautionary tale. Gang life kills, music saves, simple, clean, inspiring. But that's not what happened. According to more reliable sources, including The Guardian and Barry White's own autobiography, Darryl didn't die in the early 60s. He died in 1983, 20 years later, and he wasn't killed in a gang war. He was shot and killed by a neighbor over a dispute about change from a $20 bill. $20. That's it. Do you understand what that means? In 1983, Barry White was already a global superstar. He was rich. He was famous. He'd been making hit records for over a decade. He'd escaped, but his brother never did. Darryl stayed in that same world, that same neighborhood, that same dangerous life, and it finally killed him over pocket change. This isn't a story about redemption. It's a story about survivors' guilt. Barry got out, but Darryl didn't. Barry once said his brother didn't have music to save him. When you think Darryl died in the 60s, that's sad. But when you know he died in 1983, those words are haunting. It means Barry spent 20 years as a star, knowing his brother was still out there, still in danger, and there was nothing he could do about it. The darkness didn't stay in the past. It followed him. It shadowed his entire career, and it culminated in the worst tragedy imaginable 2 decades after he thought he'd escaped. So why does all this matter? Because Barry White's music wasn't just music, it was survival. It was therapy. The lush, sweeping orchestras he used created order and grandeur, the exact opposite of the chaos he grew up in. The steady, reliable rhythms of his songs gave a sense of stability he never had as a kid. And that voice, that deep, gentle, powerful voice, it promised protection, safety, unwavering love. He wasn't just writing love songs. He was building a fortress, a world where love was dependable and secure because his real world never was. And the man he became was revolutionary. He was physically huge and intimidating, but his lyrics were vulnerable, emotional, submissive to the power of love. He sang about being brought to his knees by desire. That was the opposite of the hard, emotionless gangbanger he had to be to survive. The Maestro of Love was the anti-gangster. He became the father figure and the safe partner that he and so many others in his community never had. Barry White's dark past wasn't something he overcame and forgot. It was the foundation of everything he created. His brother's death, especially knowing it happened in 1983, explains the desperate sincerity in every song he sang. He understood violence. He understood chaos. He understood loss. And because of that, he sang about love with a conviction that most artists could never reach. His music gave millions of people comfort, passion, and a feeling of safety. The Maestro of Love was born in the streets of South Central, and his voice was forever shaped by the life he barely escaped and the brother he tragically lost. So what do you think about Barry White's incredible journey from crime to legend? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more untold stories.